Bonjour, vous me recevez? Attendez, il y a un petit paramètre qui me bloque. Hi everyone. Vous m'entendez bien?
Le son, c'est bon. Et en revanche, la
D'accord,
vidéo, j'ai la main. Oui, c'est ça, j'ai la main, pardon. Je l'avais pas tout à l'heure.
très bien.
Ça va?
Oui, oui, ça
Attendez,
va bien.
je
Ça
vais
va bien.
mettre un fond d'écran.
Moi, je vais rester avec ce fond blanc et sobre. Là, on a encore 16 personnes en salle d'attente. On va, on va les admettre, je pense, progressivement. On peut les admettre dans quelques instants. Là, il est 30, donc on peut déjà commencer. En fait, je vais commencer par faire la présentation. Enfin, je vais vous présenter, vous, quelques mots sur la conférence, et ensuite, je vais vous laisser présenter avec à peu près une heure de conférence, une demi-heure de questions-réponses, si ça vous va. Enfin,
Ça marche. On
plutôt
y va.
55 minutes avec le temps d'introduire tout le monde et de vous présenter rapidement. Voilà, voilà. Bon, je vais admettre tout le monde. Hi everyone, so I'm now admitting all the people that want to attend this conference. So welcome to the conference of Laetitia Pouliquen. And we will start in a few minutes, so time for everyone to join us. And I will check regularly if there is new people that join us, so to be sure that no one is left behind. If you want, you can also open your camera, so it will be more convenient, or not, you can stay in this mode, as you prefer. All right, so everyone now is here. There is no one left in the waiting room. So I will start with a few words about Laetitia Pouliquen. So thank you very much for giving this conference. It's a real pleasure to have you here. So just to say a few words, and also you can complete what I will say, and to say that after an international career in IT, you earn a master degree in bioethics and found the NBAC Ethics. So it's a European think tank, and it's aiming at fostering the advent of technological humanism that participates in the ethics guideline for trustworthy AI for the European Commission currently. And your core activity is the European regulation. And also you are a co-author of the open letter on robotics and AI to the European Commission signed by many AI researchers, denouncing the creation of a legal personality for certain robots. And also you write a book about a woman 2.0, feminism and transhumanism, and you are also a member of the European AI Alliance and a regular keynote speaker to the European Parliament. So just to know that here was also an ethical course. So your point of view is very interesting because it's completely complementary about what we are doing here. And also a few words about the topic of today. So it will be about ethical issues of eHealth data space. So there is millions, almost 1 billion people that are around the world that have ID traceable right now. And it could include a civil registry, administrative tax information, health data. So, and there is this European mechanism that could change a lot of things on health. So just to recap, this is a health master related with AI. So you will explore during this conference the regulation from a legal and ethical perspective. and you will give your point of view about the usage of this kind of technique. So please go ahead, and thank you again for your presence.
Thank you, Alexandre. Very nice introduction. I appreciate that. Would you mind allowing me to share my slides, please? The feature seems to be deactivated.
Tell me if you can right now to share your screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So just to say that it will be 1 hour per se conference, and then it will be 30 minutes for question and answer.
Right. How does it show? Does this work?
Yes, but we have all screen right now. Perfect.
Okay, good. Okay. All right. So curtain lift off. Well, thanks very much for being with us today. I can't see anyone, so if anyone should be willing to show one's face, I'd feel a little bit more like in the classroom or in a conference room somehow. Thank you. It's very kind of you. It's bad, speaking to my slides is not the best of my activities. Anyway, so thanks very much for being here. I truly believe that as a master's student, you have a key role in what I will explain and what unfolds right now at the European Commission. As you're possibly researchers, developers, and students in AI in health, I think this is very key to our future. You are very key to our future in making sure that things unfold in the most ethical and ecological way possible, and in full respect of humankind. So let's get started with these very general comments. So what I'd like to cover today is a general perspective over digitalization of Europe, what's been going on since 2016, the GDPR regulation. Then we'll go in depth into the health data space, EHDS. And then we'll extend actually the health issues, the ethical issues on health, and when it comes to AI, biotech and robotics, which obviously, as you know, confers a very high usage of data. And then finally, as a final comment, I will try and open new alleys for a full respect for human dignity and make some proposals. Let's get going. Digitalization of Europe, what's been going on so far? So since the GDPR in 2016, we had the adoption of the European Framework for Digital Identity, EID, what I call EID. It's a revised regulation that already existed with the aim to ensure universal and harmonized access within member states for all individuals and businesses. At this point, it contains digital identities, like name, sex, birthplace and date, but it also aims at adding information like certificates to provide a transparent access to information like a diploma from Université de Grenoble to your Spanish digital identity with a German residence permit, for instance. So all this aims at being completely transparent and fluid, but on the longer run, bank access, tax declaration, and registration for university, for instance, should be accessible through this ID wallet. The reason why I'm actually recapping it, I forgot to give you the heads up, the background information. The reason why I'm summarizing the whole digitalization program of the EU is for two reasons. One, there's been a lot going on. And it's been ongoing for the past 30 years, of course, but there's a sort of a very strong acceleration for technical reasons, obviously, and heavy data access with processors and storage, easy storage, etc. But also on a pure political point of view, I believe, where data needs to be, one, protected on one hand, and two, accessible and productive, efficient somehow. This is where the European Commission stand from. That's why, really getting to understand where health data space fits in, whether it actually overlaps with digital identity, with Data Act, with possibly the AI Act, and this is probably of the utmost interest to you, as well as the SOHO regulation, which I will comment. So, coming back to my point, EID, you've understood what that was. The Data Act, what is it? It's a data regulation with several objectives. One is to facilitate the sharing of data from connected objects in return for fair, equitable, and proportionate compensation. So really the idea is to make sure the data is being used all across the board for better usage and effectiveness. It also aims at authorizing, and that's something that makes my teeth cringe, public bodies of member states and institutions to have access and the right to use this data, provided they can demonstrate an exceptional need. And therein we definitely have things like the COVID safe ticket, as well as health data covered when it comes to pandemics. Now, the Data Act also establishes rules for international cooperation regarding the transmission of non-personal data and the fight against illicit access to this data, in particular against intrusions by governments of third countries. So the whole idea is to actually make sure that within the EU we can access and fluidly share in and compensate data for industrial usage, for instance, but also protected in silo against usage and infringement from third countries. There's one exception to that, though, and we've actually discussed it extensively, Alexandra and I, is the Biden Agreement on extraterritoriality of data. The adoption of the Privacy Shield in the US led Ursula von der Leyen and Biden to agree that Europe should be somehow in cooperation with the US into the respect of exchanging data in cases of criminal offense and pursuit. But it is obviously contested within the EU in the name of the protection of citizens' data to allow companies to transfer this data from Europe to the United States. So it's non-controversial. It's really controversial at this point, and we're not sure. It's actually going to the Court of Justice of the European Union at this stage. So we'll see what comes out of it, and I'll keep you informed. AI Act, you probably know a lot about this since you're into machine learning, developing, etc., etc. But then just to summarize what this is all about, it was adopted at the European Parliament last June, and the text provides a risk-based approach, which is step one of a deliberate philosophical point of view over the approach to AI that can be used. It can be discussed, and the UN and the G7 has been discussing it in the past months, but at least it's step one. And so this risk approach has been listing, and that a ban over certain AIs and high-risk AIs. As you know, the ChatGPTs of this world have been added to high risk, as well as AI systems to influence voters in elections. It also defines general principles that we all agree upon: robustness, security, transparency, data privacy, you name it. We all agree on this, and it's been on the table for years and years and years now. MEPs also expanded in the latest versions. MEPs, members of the European Parliament, members of the Parliament, have extended the classification of high-risk areas to include attacks on people's health. That's interesting. On security, and in systems recommendations for profiling, for instance. Typically, biometric categorization systems using sensitive characteristics such as gender, race, ethnicity, citizenship status, religion, political orientation, all of this, and predictive policing systems, all of this is actually in the high-risk area, high-risk AI list at this point. The European Artificial Intelligence Office has been formed, and it comes as a support together with the European, which you might have heard of the ECAT as well, the European Center for Algorithmic Transparency, based out of Spain. Those two bodies are actually here to support, advise, and cooperate with member states and national supervisory authorities to make sure that the regulation is implemented correctly and that there's no infringement. Now, why am I putting SOHO regulation, and what is this on the slide? SOHO is something that on the paper has nothing to do with data, but it does. It actually concerns the quality and the safety standards for substances of human origins intended for human application. SOHO means substances of human origins. It's an acronym that is easier to use. And the reason why I've listed it is because, of course, data is going to be preempted by for government usage to make sure that blood, tissues, fetuses, gametes, embryos, and cells are available for donations on a need basis, on a required basis throughout member states, on a need basis, whatever. So of course, this is completely based out of data, and at some point even on personal data. You'll need to get back to frozen embryos and gametes that needs to have a certain level of personal data accessibility for countries that do not anonymize such donation. Then let's move on to the actual eHealth data space. So what is this? So in the My Health at EU is the application that will be made available through a centralized platform and a common infrastructure for all member states to ensure connectivity and interoperability for health data management systems. The proclaimed benefits of EHDS are as follows. For the patient, it means control of the health data, secure, easy access, modification, sharing data with the way they want it, correcting them, enriching them, for instance, when it comes to wellness applications, or restricting access, and we'll cover a lot about this in the opt-in, opt-out, informed consent concepts. And therefore, for the patient, the final aim is to get a better diagnosis, ideally. For healthcare providers, what that means is, of course, faster access to patient files. It means monitoring of these files and a reduction in red tape, administrative formalities and paperwork, which is always likable in the lights of all what MDs have to do in hospitals and in their own practices. All the paperwork being taken away, hopefully empathy will grow and time will be made available for patient care. For the world of research, and that might include you somehow, the access to very large quantity of usable data, of high quality data at a low cost, and therefore the development of better treatments. That means better apps. That means better AI development. That means you would ideally be able to access data, making sure that your testing is good, your sandboxing is efficient, and then finally the market usage is widely adopted. And finally, for health products and service industry, access to new markets and innovation would be made easier thanks to the harmonization of formats and statistics and the greater availability of data in general. And that is obvious. All of this is actually ideally, all of those benefits are ideal, and hopefully it will happen this way. In the meantime, the reason why we're discussing ethics is because there are steps to be made to improve and reach out to these final objectives. There's been one prohibition in the EHDS. It's very timely. We have this conference, Alexandre, today, because the vote took place at 11:30 today in the co-committee ENVI, which is health and environment, as well as the LIBE, which is freedom and human rights, the European Parliament. So the co-committee adopted a full array of amendments, and so I have a general idea of what the final text put to the vote in the plenary will look like. So that's very timely, this conference at 3:30. So anyway, I had some work to do before I could present the proper options that were given and that were put to the table at this point. And so I actually want to emphasize one example that I feel is going in the right way. The prohibition of the usage of data for the purpose of measures harmful to the natural person and of insurance premiums and advertising products and treatments, as well as developing harmful products, has been emphasized and in details. And I will cover more about this with the proper verbatim that has been used in the regulation. Let's move on to what type of data. The type of data are twofold. And I will actually go back to what the GDPR was saying about data, about health data at this point. In 2016, the GDPR was actually saying that personal data concerning health are data relating to the past, present, and future physical and mental health of the natural person, including the provision of a healthcare service, which reveal information about the condition, health of that person. It includes information relating to the natural person collected when registered for a healthcare service, as I just said, and during the provision of these services. And so a number, a symbol, a specific element assigned to a natural person to identify them in a unique way for health purposes. And I'll give you two examples with France and Belgium further out. And it might include as well testing, examination of body parts, body substances, genetic data, biological samples, and information concerning illnesses, disability risk, risk of illness, medical history, blah, 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 clinical treatment, etc., physiological, biomedical state, etc. So this, we've actually gone one step further with the health data space in defining two types of usage, primary and secondary, and two rules, two types of usage and possibilities, as well as prohibition. So primary usage is quite obvious. It's the patient ID, it's his prescriptions, dispensations, his or her medical images, lab results, discharge, etc. So potentially harmful information if you lay a hand on those, but also very useful when you step into the hospital for an emergency treatment or just for regular treatment on, say, cancer, your chemo in cancer. The secondary usage is actually where lies in some not only technical protection issues, but also some ethical issues. Your eHealth record is of secondary usage as a whole. But here, second bullet point, social, environmental, behavioral determinants of health, including professional status, education, lifestyle, wellness application, your Apple Watch, with your data, as well as insurance status. So as you can see in the second bullet point, there's a wide array of information that are relevant in determining your health condition, and your health prospect in the future. That's for sure. When it comes to your eating habits, when it comes to your education, which might entail, your socioeconomic status. But how about insurance status? How about your lifestyle? How relevant is that? And how about vaccine status, for instance? I haven't listed it on this page, but we'll see that there's been some serious infringement when it comes to vaccination. Following following my list, you might read as well the pathogen genomic data, genetic, genomic, and proteomic data, health data from clinical trials, research cohorts, as well as data from biobanks, embryo, there's a no missing here, embryo, gamete, fetus, stem cells that are in freezers, cryogenized in biobanks, umbilical cord, for instance. Americans love freezing umbilical cords because it's full of stem cell blood cells that are very rich for the future, and that could possibly be used for a cure should a serious condition arise. So there you go, primary, secondary usage. They will see that the safeguards that are put to these data in terms of anonymization as well as pseudonymization in the coming slides. But what I can say at this point is that the text has seriously improved in the process. I was extremely worried by the fact of not reading in any paragraphs, whereas annex or articles, I was not reading any mention of an opt-out or opt-in, for instance. I was not reading anything about any caution about genomics, for instance. And so we're actually moving towards the right direction. There's been a very, very long process of amendments and finding compromise amendments on this text. But yet, there's some way to go, and we'll see how. So when it comes to the regulation body that's been put into place, you've seen some of it for the AI Act, but then specifically for the Health Data Space Board, they have actually created, on top of the national entities, national organizations, a board, a European board, chaired by the European Commission itself, with experts. That is supposed to be facilitating the cooperation, the exchange of information. Basically, what this body does is that it defines the technical specs, the tech specs for the harmonization, as well as it rules the rules in labeling the quality and the quantity of data, as well as the type of usage that will be what that would be allowed. So it is the harmonization of data is in the European Commission's hands fully. That you need to understand that. At the national level, what remains is the redress mechanism on the first in the first intention in case of human rights infringement, for instance. But the fraud and irregularity prevention is still at the European board level itself. One point that really matters to me is that it's the Court of Justice that is the instance that you need to turn to should a fraud or a hack on your identity, as well as an infringement of your rights from your own government arise. And that tells a lot in terms of political philosophy, and I'll explain why later. checking on the time. So the legal justification. On what ground can the European Commission lay some groundwork on health data? Supposedly, health is not a competence of the European Commission conferred by the Lisbon Treaty. But in fact, the Treaty of Functioning, Articles 4 and 6, gives some leeway to the European Commission in that, and I read, in matters of common security issues in public health, the Union has a competence shared with the member states, so it's a shared competence, and it can actually exert a support competence in order to carry out actions to support, coordinate, and complement the action of member states in the field of protection and improvement of human health. So as you can see, a Europe of health is possible. And this is exactly what the European Commission is trying to do. It doesn't mean at this stage that national bodies are being overtaken or swallowed into one huge European body, but the idea of harmonization of data on the guise of innovation and research benefits, as well as patients, of course, is actually one way of seeing it. You could actually seeing it, when you're cynical like I am, in the way of a gain of competence from the European Commission that is probably inadmissible. The reason why I say that is because why on earth does the European Commission need to have access to our well-being data? Why on earth does the European Commission would have access of and be able to trace us in case of future pandemics? So, you know, it's really a political centralized approach, and there's a whole philosophy behind it. There's innovation on one hand, industry benefits, big dollars, and research advancements, which are huge and very beneficial, but a switch towards something that we might not control at some point. The legislative train, this is typically the way we call it at the European Parliament level. The train means, you know, there's a whole process, and at some point the train reaches the station and it's the end of the process. So we're not at the end of the process. What happened is today, since 2022, when the text was issued, we've been amending and proposing. There was actually 3,000 amendments on this text, if I recall well, and I actually helped table 20 of them. And it's a co-committee, as I mentioned, co-committee initiative, as I mentioned earlier, ENVI, Health and Environment, as well as LIBE, which is Human Rights and Fundamental Rights and Freedom. It was adopted in this co-committee just this morning at 11:30, and it will be voted upon at the European Parliament on December 12th. In the meantime, we'll try and table some additional amendments for in the view of the December 12 plenary session in Strasbourg. And then once the European Parliament will adopt it, which it will, whichever way that there's, you know, the political forces here are in place to make sure guarantees that we'll have this European health data space adopted. It will go to a trilogue system, which you might be aware of. It's this instance where the Council, together with the European Commission and the European Parliament, and namely the rapporteurs, the two rapporteurs, Mrs. Tardino and Mr. Sokol, will discuss together in closed sessions behind closed doors. Sometimes, not always. Actually, I've been able to attend some trilogue discussions, but generally speaking, it's actually typically to make sure that lobbies don't interfere in the work. And so they will try and find the best way for the council members for the best way for this regulation to be made acceptable by the member states at the council level. This text needs qualified majority, doesn't need unanimity. And so typically after 27, I've heard maybe one or two that are really suspicious about this text, but the odds are that it will be adopted. That's in my eyes, it's quite clear. Now, what it means though is that it will take long, because trilogues are long processes, and it will overlap the legislatures. So that the June 2024 European election won't be a final stop for the process. It will still have to go through the trilogue process beyond 2024. Now, what are the ethical issues? And that's probably the nitty-gritty of it. This is what we've been expecting from my speech, as I'm not a technical person. And this is where I expect a lot of questions. The ethical issues here, in my views, are, I'd say, threefold. Three main points. Informed consent. This is, as you know, informed consent in France, at least. It came across in 2004 in the bioethics law of 2004. It first came up as a new rule, a new principle for medical practitioners to make sure that patients are fully made aware of what they're doing and fully made aware of the risks. The advantages, the challenges, but also the challenges and the risks that they might incur in getting such treatment. And so informed consent is the basis of data protection, really, and not the basis of data protection. It's the basis of the opt-in and opt-out process, where your privacy can be respected or not. Let me explain. Health providers, in certain instances, are supposed to be having you sign a form saying that you do agree. With the eHealth data space, it will be automatically agreed upon with your data, as soon as you just click in and sign in with your data, with your card or with your cell phone, then it means that you agree on sharing this data with your health practitioner. The opt-out just came up with the discussion on amendments. The European Commission did not want that as an option, but the opt-out came as a way of saying, well, if a patient is fully aware of this data sharing and disagree on the data sharing, it could ask to opt out. So that's a good way of getting an informed consent somehow, and getting data privacy protected. The text still provides what I quote here, that health providers could still be granted access to patients' private data, even if they opted out, provided there is a strong medical necessity. So that means that on the one hand, you've got an informed consent and you have your freedom of choice somehow guaranteed. But on the other hand, that means the health providers, if they believe as a health provider, as a specialist, that you have not unveiled a piece of information that is critical for them to make a decision, to make an informed decision on and a diagnosis, that they would have access to this. So you see this as pros and cons. Genomics. I was actually stunned to see that genomics were part of this, because genomics means DNA research means genetics. Genetic research means orphan diseases could be tackled. Means, you know, people that have not that suffer from a special genetic condition without any access to research could finally have access to this. It's awesome. But what that also means is that we've been able to enter a new world where databases tell you who's good to go and who's not. It also means that the data silos will provide health providers and service providers, whether public or private, a huge mana for research and innovation. So data, just like we said for GDPR, we are the product. All the data that we provide make the industry richer. And also, eugenics is something that I will fight till the end of my life. Single market approach, the single market, and that's really something that we need to understand. The fact that the Court of Justice is the institutional body, the judicial body that we need to turn to when personal data have caused the predation of your data, personal health data, have caused you some personal damage, is a proof that it is a pure commercial approach. You would have thought that the European Court of Human Rights could be the right judicial instrument as well, together with the Court of Justice, but it has not been mentioned. And I think it tells a lot of the philosophy, the European political philosophy that is at stake. Data brokerage. I mentioned that the insurance status are prohibited, are not supposed to be tracked in certain instances. But you know, the lobby of the Insurance Europe, which is Insurance and Reinsurance Federation, European Federation, has complained about this prohibition. They're saying that by giving out information about insurance and personalized data, they would be able to sell out some better contracts, sell out some better insurance and better coverage for people who are in good health, that they would be more efficient and more cost effective. And so you see the predation on data is right there, and they're looking into any legal loophole to grab that data. And now there's I'd like to mention and to re-emphasize the power of the International Convention on Human Rights, as well as I didn't write it down actually, but the European Charter of Fundamental Rights as well, which does specify that socioeconomic conditions affecting one's health is absolutely not a condition for selectivity, for discrimination. And that's something that needs to be reminded all over. Now let's take an example. And I found many examples and many details on the way that they've been that the French system, which preceded the eHealth data space initiative, of course, has been infringing the current law as it stands. So the way it works in France is that you have the carte vitale together with your ID. Carte vitale is this small green card with your photo and a chip. I don't think it has your photo actually. I've been away from France. I'm French, but I've been away from France for 25 years, and I don't have a carte vitale myself. So anyway, so you have to excuse me if I'm incorrect, and please correct me. So Carte Vitale, together with an ID of some sort, whether your carte nationale d'identité or a passport, to prove your identity. This is how you'd get access to your health data, and your healthcare provider would have access to your health data. It's the ANSSI, the Systems Security, the Information System Security Agency, ANSSI, that rules the roost, and that has their jurisdiction for cybersecurity companies, and they're supposed to be supporting institutions, national institutions. So servers, infrastructures, connected objects, and software are being decided and supported by ANSSI. The dossier médical partagé, which is the shared medical dossier, is compulsory and contains, unlike in Belgium, and contains a number, an INS number, which is your medical number, as well as your social security number and your identity trace, like your name, birth name, date of birth, sex, and place of birth. L'identité numérique, digital identity system from La Poste, which is the post office in France, is the tool that the technical application is being used to prove your identity. And as it turns out, I mentioned this because La Poste has recently acquired many health service companies, including logistics and deliveries in sensitive health products, and that we do understand because it's their business. This is what they do for a living, but also players like Nouvelle Santé, New Card, who does digitalization of care, who does security of health data. And so you can see that those application and infrastructure, as well as connected objects that are being developed in the health industry, that you work, that you are actually getting trained in your masters for development, are being predated, or being really of some interest, of very high interest to people like La Poste, in conjunction with what they do in terms of digital identity. Now, two infringements in my views: Azure, which you know as the Microsoft cloud service offering. Azure has been listed as an ISO 27001 certificate as a provider for the health data hosting servers in France, and for the European Union. Actually, there's been a wide array of contracts signed recently with Microsoft. Identically, Oracle service has Oracle Corporation, has a company that's just been acquired that has a subsidiary in France called Cerner that does health applications. Those applications are really good, actually, but the point of the matter is that they're American companies, and so the Biden von der Leyen agreement and the Privacy Shield is of some difficulties, as well as data hacking in general. The GDPR and the French Data Protection Act do not require the collection of express consent. That's interesting, except in specific circumstances. But it's common for medical care or drug consumption data to be used by researchers for medical research at this point. So in some ways, the EHDS will be an improvement for French citizens. Patients will be more protected thanks to the European regulation than they are at this point with the French system. Now, two examples, Doctolib, two examples of infringement, and I need to move on. The management of the French vaccination policy with Doctolib was actually a scandal. They sold the search histories of these customers to Facebook in order to their customers, actually, in order to access targeted advertising services. Doctissimo similarly got fined for 380,000 euros, which is not a great deal, but anyway, it got fined because it failed to comply to GDPR in obtaining people's consent. So you see, the consent system is actually of the essence. There's been a third instance actually that is worth mentioning, is that a security breach at France Test, which is a startup that specializes in the transfer of data for COVID tests. Moving on to Belgium. Basically, the Belgian legislation on health data is governed by GDPR, so you would expect the same level of protection related to health. It is interesting to mention that there are exceptions to the GDPR, which is health monitoring at work, and occupational medicine, as well as work accidents, where these data would be accessible to healthcare providers. Consent cannot be considered as a legitimate basis in an employment relationship where the worker is under the authority of the employer. However, we've seen instances where employees or rather applicants were refused a job because of the healthcare condition and data. The patient, the general practitioner creates and manages the global medical dossier, and pharmacists are supposed to obtain an informed consent as well from the patient. This is something completely different from what you've seen or what we see in France. Data range from socio-administrative data, but also diseases, interventions, vaccines, allergies, medication, and such. Mental health as well. I've seen a situation where a teenage boy went through suicide attempt, went to the hospital, to the emergency room, and they failed to provide this chap with a treatment by lack of rooms, by lack of availability in mental health treatment entities. And then the story goes that an employer told me that luckily he did not get hospitalized for this suicide attempt, because otherwise employers would have access to this in his dossier. So you see that this is the extent that it could go in Belgium. It is not compulsory to get your dossier médical, but a 30% reduction is granted to you by your mutuelle, the medical insurance company. This is the way we call it here in Belgium. So you've got some financial incentives to get your dossier médical registered and made available. What else can I tell you? Yeah, in terms of companies, the way it's run, just like in France with La Poste, a digital identity, you've got It's Me, which is a Belgian private company that runs your ability to access your to create your digital identity. It's Me is actually a partnership application launched in 2017 by Belgian mobile companies, a consortium of 4 major Belgian banks, Belfius, BNP Paribas, ING and KBC, as well as 3 cell phone operators, Orange, Proximus and Telenet. And it has at this point 1.8 million users. There are other applications that are coming up. Belgium is very liberal in terms of economy and much less centralized than France. So there'll be some other options, but it's definitely a private public / public partnerships that prevail. In terms of COVID scan applications, there's been a major leak of the keys allowing access to this sensitive file, and the watermarks, the security watermark, was proven to be completely useless. So 39,000 certificates, COVID certificates, came up in the public area. And I will end with this. So the amendments that we proposed, and I will still propose, keep on pushing, is that there's no opt-out option. There shouldn't be any opt-out option. There should be only opt-in option to guarantee informed consent in whatever type of data. So basically, when you punch in your it's me, punch in your digital identity with it's me or whatever on your cell phone or on your ID card, people have access to information that they shouldn't access. Let me take an example. The other day I went to the gym to register and get membership to the gym. They asked me for my digital identity, and I realized that they had access to everything about me. Not my health data, not my criminal record, but information that they did not need. They needed me to prove that I was the person I was, that I was the person that that was showing, as well as my address. But that was it, and they had far more than that. Social security number, as well as telephone numbers, etc., etc. So basically, working in silos, protecting data by nature, and making sure that we have not only watermark security systems, but also opt-in possibilities to make sure that me as a user, me as a patient, me as a citizen agree with various organizations, be it private or public, to share in this data or not. We've seen in France, there's an opt-out system for organ donation, that we've seen some trafficking coming up because no one is aware of this opt-out option unless you're just about dying, and then they have you fill out a form about your last consent, and then they'd ask you if you want to donate or if you are registered to the non-donors registry, public registry. And of course, because you're dying, you just don't care, right? So this opt-out option on organ donation is not efficient. It really is. It really is mandatory that we push in for opt-in only, and that would actually reinforce the freedom of consent. We need to guarantee data anonymization. Pseudonymization is not enough. It is not enough. We all know, and you all know in this classroom, that it doesn't work. You could go back to the person, re-identifying the person. The re-identification protection upon request for people that, as I mentioned this earlier, this example of people suffering from orphan diseases, typically would be very much willing to make sure that they are put in contact with people all across Europe who might suffer from the same DNA defect. And that's where we need to re-identify the person. But then the protection offered technically at this point, not only in terms of technical innovation and development, but also in terms of legislative writing, is not enough. So we need to re-emphasize this. We need to make sure that there's absolutely no US-based companies as host cloud information system providers. We need to make sure that there are no private third parties, proxies, or data brokers involved. And that is really difficult to write from a legal standpoint, to express from a legal standpoint. Genomics information, unless patient consent for research and cure purposes, and that goes back to the point before, I'm sorry, This is repetition. And no third country interoperability. Actually, that some countries allow you to get treatment in India, Africa, whatever, in a transparent way. And that would mean that within the EU, within the member states, some leaking outside in third countries would be made possible technically. And we don't want that. At least I don't. In terms of Soho, what is it I want to emphasize? Okay, I'll move on. Okay, if I am to illustrate the ethical issues in the usage of data in AI, biotech, and robotics, as well as cognitive technologies, to make it, even more compelling in terms of challenges, in terms of ethical challenges. So let's dig in biotechs. And I will actually not go into details, but the DNA selection, CRISPR Cas9 technologies allowing DNA mods are actually data. They consume a lot of data, are really keen on gathering data, and rightly so. However, what we've seen is that China ministry, and I'm laughing because this is kind of cynical, kind of cynical. The Ministry of State State Security warned over the danger of genetic weapon, which could bring devastating consequences. What they are emphasizing here is that some NGOs have been predating some DNA sequences and files and data, allowing them to create bioweapons according to ethnicity. So bioweapons built and racialized genetic weapons built upon our data. This is what could be feasible technically if we're not watchful. Cloning the creation of microorganism is something with the Weizmann Institute's recent research as well. That's something that is highly data that uses a huge amount of data to process. What the Weizmann Institute did recently in October 2023 and published in Nature magazine is that a research team created a complete model of a human embryo from stem cells cultured in a lab up till day 14. And this embryo, called what they call a synthetic embryo, or an embryonian, like you can see, you can read on your slide, is actually was proven to grow outside the womb up to 14 days in perfect health. The only thing that it was lacking is the dynamic ability to progress, which is actually one of the main ability of a natural embryo. But the reason why I'm mentioning is because the data that will be needed to process and go beyond day 14 is huge. And of course, biotechs need to be extremely cautious when when going that alley. In terms of robotics, brain implants, IoT, of course, you've all been made aware of the issue of hacking neural rights, the creation of neural rights for cognitive protection with cloud connection coming from a brain implant, for instance. Ransomware on hospitals and medical institutions, as we've seen before, data is the new gold, and we all know that. But of course, ransomware on hospitals, making sure that those institutions are completely protected and highly secured in terms of data, is of the utmost importance. Otherwise, of course, they will be made to a malevolent usage, made available for a malevolent usage. And then I mentioned ChatGPT. I should have written actually for non-trademark issues, but I should have mentioned chatbots. There's been this ongoing comparison between the empathy shown by a medical doctor or a chatbot. And what you can see is that thanks to data, the huge amount of data, as well as LLMs, empathy that demonstrated by chatbots are much greater, appreciated, much greatly appreciated, much more so than from medical doctors themselves. So, in essence, if we want to guarantee the quality of diagnosis, the quality of the relationship between a patient and a doctor, we can use chatbots for sure. And chatbots will be more efficient in many diagnosis instances, but yet we need to make sure that we keep this ethical line where LLMs are always complemented by humans, and that a human-centric approach is always guaranteed. And this is going to be my last slide. Ta-da! A few proposals. What I'd like to, and that's almost philosophical, my dear Alexandre. Basically, in my views, when we are to talk about human dignity, there is no such thing as eugenics. We cannot allow our DNA data to be hacked. We cannot allow racial or medical condition discrimination. In terms of digital respect for the vulnerable, this is something that we've enhanced greatly in AI Act, but in data, in health data, we still are in the process of amending this text in this way to make sure that guaranteed state protection is technically and legally feasible. Of course, you do realize that there's a huge amount of ideology behind it and politics behind it, because discriminating upon rare diseases, discriminating upon the elderly, discriminating against the handicapped, all of this means money. It means more money. It means selecting the healthy against the non-healthy. And so we need to make sure that our policymakers do remember that vulnerability, even the more vulnerable, are part of humankind. Definition of data protection, and I will offer actually this definition of data protection, and it is taken from the German Constitution, and I think we need to remind this every single day of our lives, especially you researchers who deal with data on a daily basis. Every individual retains their informational self-determination as an expression of their dignity and of their human rights. On a more basic and pragmatic level, we need to, but it's going to be in the coming years, it's going to be really difficult. We need to control the GAFAMs, that's for sure. And in international bodies such as the WHO, I'm not sure you're aware, but the COVID safe ticket has been, technology behind it has been made, has been developed, what they call the green pass, that's been developed at the European Commission level, has been made available for free to the WHO. That means that all across the world, this tracking device, tracking app, could be made available to make sure that everyone's been fulfilling their vaccination obligation. So controlling the GAFAMs, I could comment on this later on, but there are a few ideas here, and many political actions undertaken, and I've covered this with the AI Act recently, including a treaty with the Council of Europe. Equal opportunities for EU-based companies to guarantee EU health data space or health research. and that's very obvious. But it seems that equal opportunities are still difficult to reach out to. Luckily, we have La Poste and It's Me to guarantee a digital identity. But when it comes to health data, unfortunately, they're mostly American-based companies at stake. And finally, my final point is actually an address to you directly. Please be creative, be innovative, and make sure you provide the best wallet, silo, strongbox / safe anonymization techniques and labeling structures that you can to make sure that we are safe and sound, as well as respected as a human person. I really thank you for your attention. It's been an hour in digital format, but hopefully we can move from here and dig into your questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Laetitia, for this wonderful conference and the very relevant point that you mentioned on this call also to action for the future practitioners that are here. So if you have any question, you can ask it directly, or you can write it down and I will speak for you. All right. So, and if you can think about it, because I have also a few questions. So
Teresa is raising a hand.
Yeah, you raise a hand if you have any question directly.
Teresa did.
So
do you see her?
What? Sorry.
Teresa is raising her hand.
Yeah. To raise yeah, you can raise the hand as you want. Okay, so there is already some kind of questions there. Did you heard about any blockchain solution or other safer solution about this kind of mechanism? So please go ahead about if you heard anything about that.
No, I'm not a technical person. Obviously, blockchain is the way to then tokenization as well as safe and key mechanisms is the only thing that I'm aware of. But I'm virtually turning back to you to inform me on this technically. So the answer is no.
All right, thank you. I would like to ask a question about the different the confrontation of concept that we see in the EU. So this is very interesting because we talk a lot about autonomy, privacy, and also the need to have medical protection. But on the other hand, there is the kind of lobbying, we can say it, of some groups that want to have their agenda and their schedule about their economic program and so on. So it would be a question maybe about your observation in a sense that do you see in the European Parliament this kind of lobbying between, I would say, the lobbying for the protection of privacy, autonomy, and the other end, the lobbying of some companies or organizations that want to promote a more, I would say, economic version of health data?
Yeah, I do. I will not drop names though, because I don't want to be tagged as a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, sure.
But you might have been made aware of the COVID committee that was created right after the signature of the contracts between Moderna and Pfizer and the European Commission. Oh, actually, not the European Commission. Even the negotiation went through von der Leyen herself. So there's always been some very strong pushes from pharmaceutical companies, and I've seen this from my own eyes in the past 10 years. So way beyond the COVID thing. And of course, the COVID vaccination negotiation went into, got us into ballistic contracts. So the numbers are way beyond what we've ever seen, what we've seen before. But yeah, lobbying has always been here in this house for years and years and years now. if it were, I'm not going to schizophrenia somehow of the European Commission between balancing autonomy, privacy, informed consent, non-discrimination, protection of people, together with those influences of companies that do good somehow. They put enormous amounts of money in research and development that they need, to make sure that we get the right medication at the right time. So it's really striking the right balance between innovation and our principles, and the basis of our the founders, the European institutions founded, fathering founders. So, and striking this balance means in no ways not discussing with the industry. I think that would be counterproductive. But what I do see, and this has been going on, is for a while now, is financial negotiation, and this needs to stop. I don't know how. It's always been the case, but I've seen it, for sure. It's equally with the GAFAMs. The GAFAMs. You just take the Microsoft lobby here, based out of Rue de la Loi, just around the corner. They have a big team, and they can achieve a lot, compared to small players. So it's also a matter of the disparity between the small players and the big players. If we are to push for native, member state native apps, based in the country, on servers based in the country, with Belgian, Spanish, Maltese, or Norwegian or Swedish developers, then that means that we are to spend more money, because it's costly, and because some of those apps are actually available in the United States for a cheaper price, because it's already developed, and the R&D ongoing process is underway. So basically, what I'm saying is they have good intentions, but practically speaking, it's conspiracy is proven. There are some attacks on some serious hacking of our privacy, for sure.
Yes. Thank you for your testimony about that. So it's known vaguely that there is this lobbying, but I think that there is not enough information about that. So thank you to communicate about that.
Yeah, and I can go into more details on a Zoom call.
Yeah, sure. So Jean-Alexis, please go ahead.
Yes, so thank you for your presentation. It was really interesting. I had a question. You told us that we should not allow US-based company to host the data in the US, not inside the European Union. Do we have an alternative to this issue? Because I mean, Microsoft and the GAFAM has the technical powers and the financial to host those data. So is there any solution within the European Union, or?
Well, the Oracle Corporation, for instance, has this offer of nationally based servers. So what they do is that they could provide for servers on the premises of the company itself, or in the institution. So yeah, we're starting to see some highly protected cloud servers solutions that could be the good way to go. And it's obviously, the European Commission, they probably don't have much choices in going this way. Now, some of the data exchange treaties between the US and the European Union are still embarrassing, as I was mentioning. So, it's going the right way, but yet, we are it's under negotiation, under heavy negotiation, and and technical solutions will come up, I'm sure.
Okay. And about the cooperation with the US, is it only regarding the safety? Because you told us about safety, about person and so on, or is it also a cooperation from the health data and so on?
Health data, as it stands in the EHDS regulation, has been is actually quite is already categorized. They know exactly what they're heading at. They know what they want to collect. They know which way and how they want to label it, and they know the quantity and the quality that they want to achieve. So no, those American-based companies are not going to define what type of data the European Union would like to in a harmonized way, like to collect from all 27 member states. No, I don't think so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Jean-Alexis.
If there is no question, I have also another question that you mentioned at the end of your presentation. So more especially about the fact that there is a weaponization of genomics, especially in China. So I just want to make a short point about this, and also the other technology, because I think that your the name of your think tank, NBIC, is extremely relevant, especially for this topic, because for example, I just saw that the Japanese are working on the modernization of their army. So for example, they have really futuristic ideas that seems like sci-fi. So for example, they want to use hologram to project lure and to make things that they have some people, some soldiers that are in some place that in case are not, because this is just images. We have also, this is for the, I would say, technology part. There is also a link with AI in the sense that United States really think about developing autonomous weapon and killers robots, to speak clearly, to compensate their numerical inferiority against China if there is a war. So, it's interesting to see that the Chinese have the approach of using genomic in this kind of work. So we have to be really imaginative, because sometimes the projection and the use of some military is beyond what we could provide, what we could imagine as the civilians. So my question there would be if you could say more information, maybe, about the use of CRISPR-Cas9 as a biological weapon.
I'm not sure it was CRISPR-Cas9 actually that the Chinese
okay.
state security minister mentioned. What I've understood from the whole story is that from a Chinese, The Guardian, in the Chinese magazine, is that they've noticed that some NGOs, non-governmental organizations, are actually gathering. So it's probably a hack. From volunteers, volunteering citizens, some data about their ethnicity and DNA sequencing. So what this allows is, once you gather big data, and this actually, they launched in if I'm not mistaken, if I remember well, in 2012, they launched the biggest, and they called it the Google of DNA in China. I can't remember where, in which city, but and they've gathered millions and millions and millions of sequencing. So their DNA library is much bigger than anywhere else in the world. And what they do with this, there's those NGOs, and that's where the minister was actually very anxious to caution the world about this, and people like us, the man in the street, is with this DNA information, we can actually pull out some data about ethnicity and turn it into a bioweapon against a certain category of people. That's all. My understanding doesn't go beyond this in terms of what type of bioweapon that is, but it was purely racialized. The racialized technical approach. I mean, we know that racial discrimination has been taking place in this world from day one, but at this scale, with technical instruments like big data, this can turn out to be extremely dangerous.
Yeah, thank you very much for more info about that. There is also a question in the chat, so I will read it. So, from Anouk. So maybe I missed it, but will the European health data repositories be connected to national ones, such as the health data hub in France? So, from a non-expert point of view, it seems that there are several independent initiatives towards this goal of centralizing health data that could be looked as scattered efforts toward this huge task.
And thank you for this great overview of the question.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot, Anouk. Thanks a lot. It's always useful to know that you're relevant and you're actually bringing something to the plate. So I'm glad you're giving some good feedbacks. The repository that you're talking about with the European French health hub, data health hub, is actually the main collector, the main controller of data. That's for sure. This is what the regulation provides for. What they are looking into doing is defining the framework of the nature of the data that they want to collect and how it could be harmonized throughout the member states so that we could actually plug them in. So basically, France will still be in charge of one's data. They are still in charge. And that's why actually the process, when you've noticed an infringement and when there's damage done to your own data privacy, you have to turn to your national government first, and then eventually to the board, to the European board. So it's a two-level thing. But what I see in terms of politics, though, is yes, a federalized approach, a harmonized approach to data, to health data, and the best example being the Green Pass. The Green Pass is actually that the European Commission developed this harmonized tool, and has been made available in a non-compulsory manner, but at some point maybe it could turn out to be compulsory. And that would mean that, the European institutions would actually manage the whole of vaccination status, and not even at the national level anymore. So maybe it's perspective, and maybe I'm being too anxious, but basically, being in charge of harmonization and being this regulator does mean that you're still giving a free hand to the national governments, but you're a strong supervisor over where they need to go, which way they need to go, and eventually, in case of pandemics, it's been written as one of the main objectives, as an emergency call for a common framework for European data. Does this answer your question, Anouk?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we have a question from Adrian. So please go ahead.
Yeah, I hope you can hear me. So thank you also for this presentation. You spoke quite a lot about the opt-out option. Can you tell us the way the Act currently is formulated? What would be the consequences for like a basic patient, a basic citizen? What would be the consequence of opting out?
Opting out means you don't make your data available. That means that in case your healthcare provider notices something going wrong with you, if the data is being opted out, then they won't have it at hand to manage and figure out what's going on. So on the one hand, this is something negative because you're not giving the full picture. But on the other hand, that means that you still have control and you still have self-determination over who you are and what you want to keep secret for yourself, and what you want to make available to data health, to health providers, and possibly the general public. So it's a balance that you need to strike for yourself. And I see opt-out as the minimum security that we can provide. And ideally, as I said, I'd like opt-in, an opt-in option everywhere, whatever the type of data we're talking about. You know, typically, you know, when you open your general medical dossier, you would have to cross off or tick off, you know, what you want to make available, and the rest is for yourself. You keep it for yourself. Is this good enough, Adrian?
Yes. So if I understand correctly, that means that the information would still be available to your national, let's say, health provider, of course, because that would not change anything. It just would not be made available internationally, let's say, within the EU.
No, it means more than that. It means that your health provider will not necessarily be informed of this piece of data that you don't want to make available.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So we have the last question with Jean-Alexis again. So please go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering about the opt-in, opt-out solution. Is there any regulation currently on what data a company is allowed to acquire from the people that they are, from the customers? Or so, for example, if it's a health provider, is there any regulation coming from the EU that say you are allowed to collect those type of data and not those type of data? Or is it...
For apps? For digital apps, you mean in general?
Yeah, for digital apps or for private providers or...
Well, in general, you have the Digital Services Act, which I haven't mentioned actually, and I should have maybe, but I focused on the blocks that you will need. You would have needed to actually understand the intricacy between health data and the rest. An AI Act being important in terms of application development. Now, coming back to my point, in the Digital Services Act, yeah, it does specify what you're allowed to collect and what you're not allowed to collect with the general public as an application developer. When it comes to health data care, if I understand your question, which I'm not 100% sure, but basically commercially, you cannot, and this is typically what happened with Dr. Simo and Dr. Lieb in France. Typically, you're not allowed as a private as a private company within the European health data space to collect private data that are beyond the primary data. Secondary data are made available by healthcare providers, by hospitals, insurance companies as well, and so they are and they need to remain private, but they are collected at this level. Is this
Yeah, that was exactly what I mentioned. Yeah.
Okay,
thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
So we are now at the end of this conference. So thank you for your presentation. Thank you for the question, your answers to the questions.
Yep.
And I really hope that you better understand now the issue about this the eHealth data space. All right. So thank you everyone for your presence, and I hope for you for the next part of your study in the master.
Exactly. Good luck to you all. Take care. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Bye.
much.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank
bye.
you. Bye.